Okay, let's go over what's included in the box for the Dunu Kima. We have the IEMs and cable. Of course, it also comes with a nice orange case, which looks quite similar to the case that comes with the Talus. However, it is a little bit smaller. It also comes with a nice assortment of tips, including Dunu's new S&S tips and also their new candy tips. They also include a 3.5 to 6.35 adapter and a cleaning tool. Okay, let's talk about specifications, design, build, comfort, and isolation. But before we jump in, if you like my videos and you want to support my channel, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's jump in. The Dunu Kima comes in at $109, but right now I believe you can actually get it for $95.99 on hifigo.com. I'm not sure how long that price will last, so you might want to jump on that deal. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. As for the driver configuration, the Kima has a 10mm dual chamber dynamic driver with diamond-like carbon or a DLC diaphragm. The housing is made entirely out of high-density zinc alloy. However, the nozzle is made out of brass. As for the cable construction, it's made from lightweight silver-plated monocrystalline copper. As far as fit and comfort, the fit and comfort of the Kima is excellent for my ears. I was able to achieve a good seal, and I never experienced any discomfort during long listening sessions. Isolation is also pretty good. I would say it's about average. As far as the design of the Kima, I think it's really cool. I like the brushed metal angular design. It definitely doesn't look and feel like an IEM that only costs $109. The overall build quality and design is actually better than I would expect at this price point. Cable is nice as well. It's about what you would expect from an IEM at this price. It's not great, but it is adequate. Now, before we jump into the sound, I quickly want to talk about the included S&S tips, which I believe that stands for studio and stage, and also the candy ear tips. Both of these tips work really great for me and work across a lot of my IEM collection. As a matter of fact, I've been using the S&S tips on several of my favorite IEMs like the SA6 Ultra, the Zen Pro, and a few others. And both the S&S tips and the candy tips are available for purchase by themselves on Hi-Fi-Go, so I will make sure and leave a link in the description for these as well. Overall, I think that Dunu has put together a really solid package, especially when you consider the quality of the IEMs themselves, the nice case, the new tips. I think altogether, it's just a great value and is what I've come to expect from Dunu generally. It just seems like Dunu always puts their best foot forward no matter what the price range. Okay, we'll go over the overall sound signature, then we'll get into the treble, mids, bass, and technicalities. The overall sound signature comes across to me as neutral warm, and I would say falls into the category of V-shape. It also does have a little bit of sub-bass roll-off, so if your library consists of music that has a sub-bass presence, you may notice a reduced amount of sub-bass with the Kima. But as for the rest of the bass presentation, so the bass and the mid-bass, it doesn't come across as lacking at all. As a matter of fact, it does have a little more bass and mid-bass presence, giving it just a smidge of warmth and good note weight. Now, when you move into the mids and the upper mids, vocals and instruments are pushed slightly forward and are generally going to be kind of in the forefront of the mix. And as you move into the treble frequencies, what you're going to see is a substantial dip around 10K, causing vocals and instruments to come across as a little unnatural, almost as though some of their sound is missing. So again, unfortunately, instruments and vocals don't sound as natural as they should. It doesn't take away, it's not really bad though, it doesn't take away from the listening experience. It still sounds natural enough. Again, it's just when you're comparing it to other IEMs, dynamic driver IEMs, generally these just don't sound as natural as I would have expected from a dynamic driver. And again, so the upper treble frequencies above 10K, you do have a peak at around 12 or 13K, which can add a sense of sizzle and crispiness to hi-hats and cymbals. It also can accentuate attack on snares and also contribute to an overall more open or wider soundstage. Now, diving a little deeper into the sound, starting with the bass. Again, we talked about how there is some sub-bass roll-off and how if your library consists of music with a lot of sub-bass presence, you may notice those lower frequencies below around 30 hertz lacking just a little. Not that they're missing. There is still sub-bass, there's just less of it. There is still adequate amount of low frequency rumble, and things only get better as you move into the bass and the mid bass frequencies. As a matter of fact, the overall bass presence of the Kima is generally quite good, especially above 30 hertz all the way up until around 300 hertz. And again, the bass slope starts at around 300 hertz, so that gives lower instruments and some male vocals a little more body and note weight, and generally just contributes again to a slightly more warm sound signature overall. And again, of course, this is a dynamic driver, so it's going to give you that nice dynamic driver slam and impact that only a dynamic driver can. And as far as the general bass quality, it's quite clean and fast for a dynamic driver. It's also pretty accurate as well. So despite the small amount of sub-bass roll-off, overall the quality and the presentation of the bass on the Dunu Kima is quite good. Now, moving into the mids, again, the lower mids are pushed slightly forward. So instruments that fall into the lower mids and male vocals have a fuller bodied presentation and just have, again, a little more note weight. The upper mids are also pushed forward, so instruments and vocals have good energy and generally have a more forward presentation. And as for mid-range detail and clarity, I would say the Kima has about average detail retrieval for the price. As a matter of fact, I would say the overall detail retrieval is about average throughout the entire frequency spectrum. So that's the one area where I don't feel the Kima really impressed me. It was good, but it just wasn't anything that impressed me. That being said, I don't feel like it took away from my overall listening enjoyment either. For the price, I think it's pretty good and about what anyone could expect within reason. So generally speaking, most instruments and male vocals sound good. Now, where I noticed things starting to sound unnatural is in the upper mid-range and lower treble between 3K and 8K, which those frequencies affect female vocals and some higher stringed instruments. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes they could start to sound a little unnatural, and I think the reason for that is that there's a substantial bump at around 2K, and then you start to see a downward slope between 2.5 and 8K, and I believe that decreased presence in those frequencies contributes to female vocals and, again, some of those higher stringed instruments to almost sound as though they're cut off a little. Again, as though they're incomplete, so to speak, if that makes any sense. Okay, and now as you move in to to the treble past 8K, you see an even further dip around 10K and then a bump around 12 to 13K. Because of that bump at around 12 and 13K, cymbals and hi-hats have really good sizzle and, again, that perceived detail. And again, it helps to contribute to a more open sound and lends itself well to recordings with a wider soundstage. And something else the Kima does well is atmosphere and air. And again, that's probably due to its treble presence above 10K. And it also has good extension as well. Now, as for technicalities, I would say the only area, again, I feel is lacking in the Kima is detail retrieval. However, the added treble presence does help a little with that and does add, again, some of that perceived detail. And as I mentioned earlier, that 12 to 13K treble presence also helps to open up the sound stage. So the sound stage of the Kima is above average, in my opinion, at this price point. And again, combined with that nice airy upper treble, it just makes live recordings really enjoyable for me. However, the forward depth is on the shallow side. So instruments that are located in the center of the mix can tend to have a little more of an intimate presentation. Another area I feel the Kima performs above its price point is in instrument imaging and separation. The imaging is quite good. So instruments and voices have a well-defined space within the sound field. So just to kind of summarize my experience with the Dunu Kima, the areas where I felt the Kima could have used some improvement was in detail retrieval and its slightly unnatural sound in the upper mids and lower treble. And of course, there is also the sub bass roll off that we talked about. But it also only cost around $100. So the real question, it always comes down to the performance to price ratio. And also, of course, I have to answer the question, would I recommend it? And my answer would be, as far as performance, it generally performs above its price point, especially in terms of technicalities. And yes, I would definitely recommend it. And I would actually give it a strong recommendation because I personally don't feel like there are very many IEMs at this price point that can outperform the Kima. So yes, despite some of the Kima's downfalls, I generally think it is a very good value and for the most part offers performance above its price point. And then when you consider the cool design, excellent build quality, great new tips, and just the other accessories that are included, I think that the overall package is just well-rounded and it's well worth the $109. So that concludes my review of the Dunu Kima. Again, if you do like these videos, please subscribe to my channel. Please share this video. Please like this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome day.